All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the REVIVECAST. Today, I have hopefully a familiar face with most of our audience anyways. Two-time Mr. Olympia and Classic Physique, Chris Bumstead. How's it going, Chris?
It's going good. I'm happy to be down in Florida. Excited to be on the podcast.
How are you liking Florida as opposed to the Canadian side of things?
It's a bit of a sentimental question right now with everything going on up there, but I'm loving it right now. I left and it was still like freezing temperatures when I got here. So the weather and the sun was enough to make me love it. Yeah. And having gyms open, which we don't have right now, is even nicer. So it's nice to be somewhere and feel like it's a little more normal right now compared to Canada.
No face mandates or mask mandates or anything down here.
Exactly,
it's pretty much open, able to do whatever you want. So, like, obviously, Chris has been a part of Revive since the beginning.
Yep.
What is that, 2 years almost? Close to it?
Like fall 2018, I believe.
It was 2018, yeah.
Or summer 2018.
Yeah, so he's been in here since the beginning. And it's a unique situation in the sense that it was 2018 when you ran into your health issues or figured those health issues out, correct?
Yeah, that's when I had another like flare up, which we'll get into in 2016, but we had no idea what it was. Yep. So that was just like something happened, and then in 2018, that's when I was diagnosed with the autoimmune.
Yeah, and that was during your prep for the Olympia.
Yeah, I was about 4 weeks out from the Olympia in 2018.
All right, so if any of you guys don't know what Chris is talking about, he has an autoimmune issue, a disease called Berger's disease. So it's like any other autoimmune issue in the sense that your body's kind of basically attacking itself, right? Mm-hmm. So it can't function the way it's properly functions. So there's a heightened immune response. And just like any other autoimmune issues, you can do certain things lifestyle-wise, nutrition-wise, manage things well to where you're basically trying to minimize any flare-up possible, obviously. But like you mentioned earlier, you had this kind of occurrence without knowing what it was prior to being diagnosed in 2016?
Yeah, I believe with that.
So what exactly happened in that event?
That one was a little bit different, actually. It kind of came up with similar inflammation, and it was my kidneys were a little bit affected as well. They were greatly affected, but it was also, I had vasculitis with that. That's what came onto that. So my feet were like pooling with blood, and I was getting like dots all over my legs, and I actually have scarring all over my feet from it now, which that hasn't come back, because that was one of the scariest things. Oh, yeah. And that was when I had to be on prednisone for a long time, immunosuppressant. Yeah. So that happened then, and then in 2018, it was more just the noticeable things physically was just holding on to a lot of water. Like I was in prep, and I put on like 15 pounds of water overnight. Oh, wow. I had my knees were just like swollen, like so big, and I didn't know what to do. So I like put on like compression socks, and I was like still gonna go see a doctor. Sure. And then like an hour or two went by with the compression socks on, and the inflammation like liquid started to like pool over. Like my kneecap was like coming over the compression sock. It was like a lot. So I obviously then went to the hospital and kind of just started trying to figure out what the hell was going on. But
they didn't look to do the biopsy, which is the way you figure this issue out.
It took a while. Yeah. So I was in the hospital for 4 days, and I was in the total for 6 days. On the second or third day, they did the kidney biopsy. Okay. And then after a while, they just sent me home, and then I got the results a week or two after that was telling me what was going on.
So, and obviously these issues can flare up due to many factors. And it's not like Chris did something for this to happen. Like this just was in his system, and so to speak. It's kind of like it kind of lays dormant for a while, and then something, event, whatever it may happen, to cause it to have a flare up, and then boom, you have it. Then once you actually figure out what the hell it actually is, then you can do a lot more things within your lifestyle to help mitigate any issues later on down the road. Mm-hmm. So when you first were diagnosed, 4 weeks out from the Olympia. And obviously, our kidneys is huge, especially when it comes to competing because of the filtration system and basically keeping your aldosterone levels in check and water retention and all that. When you found that out, like, what was your all's initial move as far as like coming from a nutritional aspect and training aspect to try to get you show ready while watching out for this issue?
Well, we honestly didn't know what it was until I was like, it was under 2 weeks. It was like 10 days before leaving, before I was getting on my flight to go. Okay. So once I had left the hospital, we didn't know what was going on, and my body had like kind of come back down. I lost a lot of the water. I started to look a little bit better, but I was on a Lasix. I think I was on Lasix for a bit, and it wasn't doing anything. So I went on to a aldactone for a bit, helped a little bit more, and then Trizide. helped the most. So I started kind of doing that. Obviously, if you're running that for like 2 weeks, I looked like nothing. I looked like I'd lost all my muscle. It was just no liquid in me, no fluid in me. I was just like so flat. I was like, I think I just lost all my muscle in a week. Like, it was crazy. I have pictures the transformation of after I like ate a little bit more, and I like looked like I put on 40 pounds in like 2 days.
Yeah, because your cells are not 90% water. I mean, if there's nothing in there at all, you're going to look soft, flat, like you have no tissue at all.
Exactly, yeah. So pretty much we just cut my food to like nothing, and I was eating very minimal. My protein was decently low for what it would be in prep. My salts and potassium intake were nothing added. I was having like broccoli as my vegetables kind of, but nothing else other than that really. And then like chicken and rice kind of shit, and just very low of everything. No sodium, no sauces, no nothing. We were just kind of like playing as safe and simple as we get, because we didn't know what the hell was going on.
Sure. Do you just coast in like that?
Pretty much, yeah. I think I was down to eating 1,400 calories for the last 3 weeks. Wow. Just like eating nothing. Also partly because I felt like it was going to put more stress on my system to put in me. I didn't even know if I was going to compete. And I ended up going through with it, and looking back seems like an insane idea. But I'm kind of proud of myself for getting through it. I ended up being healthy on the other end, and it didn't cause any more damage. It was something like, I'm like, holy shit, I got through that, but I would never do that again. So I once I had spoken to the doctor and they let me know that it was an autoimmune, he suggested that I get on the prednisone. And I was like, how's that going to affect my body? And there's a crazy amount of side effects from that, obviously, as I'm sure you know. So I started that probably at like 6 days out the Olympia, and none of the side effects really hit me until afterwards, luckily. So I was still able to compete that year. I got on stage, and I thought I looked horrible, especially how I looked at like 8 weeks out. I looked the best I'd ever looked, like crazy. And obviously, being my size, downing on 1,300 calories for 4 weeks, no refeeds, you're going to lose some muscle. So I just looked flat. Again, I was eating no sodium or anything. There was no carb load really. So I was still holding on to a film of water. Like my shins are usually my test to it. If I push on my shin and I can like indent it and leave that indent, I'm like, fuck, something's going on. And I still had that on stage. So that was pretty rough, but that was pretty much just coasting in low calorie and simple, no sodium, potassium, anything.
And to get the placing you got, I'm sure like as soon as they announced that, obviously you two were left on stage in the prejudging. So I'm sure that obviously kind of solidified where you were going to be for the most part. And I'm sure elation and just like,
that was, I say to this day that was one of the most rewarding shows I've ever done. Like I got off stage after prejudging, and my family knew what I was going through. They were all there, and they like got past the security, and this was in the morning still, and I'm just bawling my eyes out, crying, like releasing everything. They're all back there with me. People are like, the fuck's going on? Like he looked worse than last year, and it's not over yet. But I was just so grateful that I got through it, and I was like going to be okay essentially.
And then obviously from that point forward, understanding the disease a lot more and what you could do to obviously bring yourself into a better place going into the next year and obviously the year to follow. You definitely made some changes that worked because it was, you looked good in 2018, but then obviously you just stepped it up to another level in 2019 and then repeated that again in 2020 for your wins. Because it blew my mind because obviously I knew everything was going on. And then to see that physique on 2019, I'm like, wow, they've nailed this down. Because, guys, if you understand anything about competing and the kind of fine balance to kind of peak a physique, so to speak, especially when it comes to the water, and that's where the kidneys will come in. We'll talk about some other systems that come into play as well. But that's a fine balance, especially when you're dealing with what Chris is, with the filtration issues and stuff that you could possibly be dealing with during that time if there is an initial flare up or whatever, to balance those things out, to come in dry, hard, just peel to the bone and just look the way he did is just, regardless if he won or not, that's just an accomplishment in and of itself to look at that. So how did you feel when you like stepped on that stage and presented that physique compared to the year before?
In 2019, you mean? That was, I think 2018 was still my biggest emotional moment, but 2019 was up there too. And again, it was like I kept getting better and better into something I didn't think was going to be possible. I thought I was done with bodybuilding initially when I was sick, and I was like, fuck, like I don't know if I can do this. It's not going to be worth like sacrificing my health that much long term. Like if it was really bad, I wouldn't have done it. But we felt we could mitigate it and manage it, and we did. And then being able to win the next year after coming off something like that, it was a surreal experience. And it's definitely one of those things, especially like I'm really young and I got there really quick. It's almost like you kind of miss some of those like trials and tribulations that make things worth it. That was like my little punch in the gut, being like, here's your little roadblock, figure your shit out and make it worth it. And it made it a lot more rewarding for sure.
I mean, that's kind of a major roadblock if we're being real about this, to deal with that kind of issue and then to come back and win. And you guys can talk about genetics all you want. That genetics only do you so good to when you're dealing with something like this. I mean, it's just not a normal physiological function that most competitors are dealing with to come in at their best.
Yeah.
So let's kind of go into a little bit with the other effects that this could possibly have and how things are correlating within the internal systems, within the kidney function. So two factors that kind of interplay really closely with one another is going to be like high blood pressure with your kidney function. So did you at any point experience any high blood pressure during this time, like when you first were diagnosed or afterward or any time up to now?
There was a point when I had like kind of re-begun an off season and I was putting on some weight where it did go up a little bit, and I have a blood pressure monitor at home, which I monitor it with. And when it did, that was when I was before that I was prescribed prednisone, like a medicinal blood pressure medicine. And then he'd give me that, but my blood pressure was like a little bit below average, so I didn't take it. And then when it went up to that, I started taking it, and then I started just feeling like I didn't want to really rely on that. So that was another kind of, this was the initial kick in the ass. That was another kick in the ass of like, okay, you don't have to be like huge in your off season. You have to eat this much. Like definitely don't have to eat that much food full of sodium or crappy food or anything like that. So a lot of it was diet change for that. And I was able to keep my blood pressure a lot lower. And obviously it also helps your body adapts. When it gets to a certain weight, it can adapt easier. So I don't need to put on much more weight. If I had to put on another 20 pounds, I'm sure while I'm getting used to that weight, my blood pressure would be quite increased. And then kind of you can adapt. But because every year at 260 is the max I will ever get, and I've been there for 4 years, my body is pretty good at handling that.
Yeah, that's like your new set point at this time. Exactly. So your body's accommodated to that. So pretty much all the internal organs and stuff are used to it. And obviously, if you had to put on that much weight, if you were in that situation, obviously that would not be, from a health perspective, the more optimal route to go, because that's a fine balance, having to put on excess weight. I got to be competitive, but then I have this health issue I have to manage at the same time. So it's like pro con, like risk reward type situation. And I mean, honestly, if you say you had to put on the amount of weight like that, I mean, would you have felt that you would have actually pushed that, or would you have played it safe and just done it as slow as possible, obviously, because you are still young, and not push the envelope when it comes to that?
Yeah, I always kind of told myself that there were kind of certain parameters where if I started to like if I did a show and my blood levels and like my blood work that I got done was like was worse really at all than the year before, and I'm declining, that I was going to have to hang it up. So I would be monitoring that kind of stuff, and if it was like I was progressively getting worse and unhealthier, my blood work was getting worse, I would have hung it up. And I had decided that, and it was a hard decision to make, but I knew long term, especially after some of this was after winning once, and after winning once I was like, fuck, like at least I have that. I didn't want to be done, but I'm like, at least I have that one, and I know I'm not going to be that guy who's like old and like I could have won the Olympia, never did.
I mean, you're at the point now with your physique, it's just fine tuning.
Exactly.
Like you don't need the extra size or anything like that. I mean, you're at the top of the top, and to me, honestly, until something crazy was to happen or another freak of nature was to come along, you're going to keep that title for as long as you can keep it. But like, let's go back to the blood pressure and the kidney correlation there, guys. So there's kind of like it can be like a negative spiral effect, right? So like with the high blood pressure is like one of the leading causes of like kidney failure, right? So like what that is, like over time, like uncontrolled high blood pressure can cause arteries to like in the kidneys to narrow or harden, and then obviously the damage to those arteries, they're not able to deliver like the blood, enough blood to the kidney for it to kind of do its function, right? So then we have that correlation. Okay, high blood pressure, we're going to start downregulating the function of the kidney. Okay, so when we get downregulation of the kidney, and you have like the kidneys that produce aldosterone, like we talked about, which controls obviously water balance in the body, and helps regulate blood pressure. So if you're damaging the kidneys from the high blood pressure, and then they're damaged, and then the kidneys also help regulate blood pressure, you have this kind of just negative loop just continuing to go on. So one will make the other worse. So it's just like chicken or the egg sometimes. Like I had high blood pressure. It could have caused your flare up for the high blood pressure. You never know. Or you had the kidney issues can cause the high blood pressure to come up. But regardless, guys, like they both need to be in check. Like I'm very anal with that with clients, friends, and so on. Like measure your blood pressure. That's the easiest thing. Like Chris, buy a blood pressure cuff.
They're cheap on Amazon.
Take it twice a week, once a week at minimum. And regulate that, because then that starts creeping up. Like like the regular blood pressure now is like 120/80. That's like the norm for healthy function. I take that back. So here's the bad thing. They've actually skewed that up now. Now it's like 130/80. But the problem is they're skewing it with the majority of the population. So when they do the statistical curve and measure everything, they shift it with population. So because population now is getting more unhealthy, that curve shifts the other direction.
More normal, yeah.
So they're basing the new standards off of an unhealthy population. But that's like, okay, that's common sense here, guys. So if we were 120/80 before, and now we're 130/80, just because the population is getting unhealthy, do you think you should be changing the standards in the medical community to say, okay, now this is the norm or standard deviation of everything, but so everybody's going to be pushing to that? And then that's already unhealthy.
Yeah.
From the previous one.
It sounds exactly like the way our world is going, though.
Yes.
It's almost like making people feel better about being more unhealthy. Like,
and it's like diabetes is the same way. Like it used to be like 100, 110. Now it's 110 to 120. I'm like, these numbers, these ranges, quote unquote, are going to get so out of whack that everybody in the nation is going to be unhealthy and kind of think they're healthy because they're in range, right? And it's a dangerous slope there within this industry. And that's what we're trying to educate on. Like, guys, don't wait until you get these red flags, right? Because when you're like 15 points, like systolic above where the norm is, you're increasing your cardiac risk by 50%. And that's just 10 or 15 points, right? And then correlate that back to the kidney function. You're damaging your kidneys doing that. And a lot of bodybuilders and competitors, kidneys are a big issue within the health of why they're having to retire early or whatever, because they're not managing their blood pressure. Right. And obviously yours is a more unique situation because of what you're dealing with. So you can see kind of the correlation between blood pressure, kidney, guys. But let's go back to something a little more simplistic and baseline, just autoimmune issues in and of themselves. They're all related in the sense of inflammation. So inflammation in the body, regardless of what it is going to cause the symptoms to heighten, to possibly get flare-ups. When we're talking autoimmune disease, we're talking rheumatoid arthritis, celiac, Buerger's disease, type 1 diabetes. I mean, lupus, there's lists and lists of them. But the all common factor is the inflammation perspective. So one thing with inflammation, we can manage that with stress, right? Because if you're stressed out, whether it's physical, emotional, metabolic, environmental with toxins, stress is stress. Yep. We all have this kind of threshold of what our body can handle from a stress perspective, and it can handle stuff for very acute periods of time. But then if that becomes kind of chronic and you don't deal or manage the stress, you kind of spill over that bucket, that threshold that you have, and then now you have the downstream effects of the blood pressure, of the kidney issues, of the GI issues, and everything that's obviously interconnected with one another. So, like with you, obviously we have training. Like as a competitive athlete, training is a huge part of everything, but training is also a stress. Yep. Right. So within your training, have you kind of managed it a little bit differently? Like maybe down more kind of deloads or down periods, and then periods where you're ramping things up, throughout the years. Have you kind of managed that at all?
Yeah, I definitely have. And like the first thing that I probably changed going through everything was like nutrition, diet, and everything. And then 2019 to 2020, when my body made the most changes, it was managing stress. Yep. Overall, both mental and like stuff I had to do in my own head and everything, as well as training. And training became, I was, as everyone is, one of the people who just love to be in the gym every day. Yeah. When I was young, I'd be here 3 hours a day, every day, no matter what. And then I had to cut that back a little bit, obviously, because I couldn't keep up. And then I thought I was at a good place, kind of taking one day off a week. And even then, it was still like my body was still feeling beat up all the time. I was like, shit, I wasn't really stretching like I should, releasing any of the tension in my muscles. I wasn't really getting body work done as much as I should. Yep. And then once all this kind of happened, I was like, okay, like after shows, I need to take a break. So the first step was taking like 2 months off like a month off training completely, and then I'd go like fuck around in the gym and like I would barely break a sweat. It wasn't a workout. Like I don't think I was really causing much stress in my body. So that was about 2 months, and then I would very slowly ease back into the off season. And then when I was at my peak off season, even then my training volume was a little bit low. I stopped doing like 3 to 4 sets, and it was like 1 to 2 working sets per exercise, and just like getting what I can out of it, and then taking 2 days off every week.
Oh, nice.
And if I started to get to the point where everything just felt so beat up, my sleep was bad and everything, even like that, I would take an extra 2 days off or so that week. And I would like, as much as I didn't want to, and like everyone's like hardcore train through it, you know? I was like, I've done every aspect of it. I've been hardcore, and it helped, but then it kind of stopped helping. And I know I'm not going to die from missing an extra day in the gym that week. So I definitely brought that down a decent amount. And on top of that, I started doing like a lot of body work, stretching a little bit more. I was getting massages twice a week, getting a lot of the tension and just stuck in my body released. And all this stuff, I think, really just helped my body relax.
Yeah, so you really started managing the physical component of the stress that we're talking about. And then you also mentioned like the mental stress, which I think is huge for a lot of people, the mental emotional side of things, whether it could be your significant other or finances or whatever. Those are because an emotional mental stress is harder to manage than the physical. The physical, we can take time off, we can go get the massages and do all that stuff. And it's very easy to manage. But when we come to that mental emotional side, that's kind of the one that's for most people that I see, they have the hardest issue with. Is there anything that you did that helped you manage any like the mental emotional stressors that would randomly like kind of pop up in life? Did you because like a lot of people, they'll do things like guided meditation or journaling or talk to somebody or whatever it may be. Was there anything that you did in particular to help manage the emotional and mental type stress in life?
Yeah, there was definitely a bunch of things because like, again, when people talk about how I made such a crazy change from 2019 to 2020, the difference was in 2019, all I changed was my health or my like physical health stuff, like diet and everything. But that whole prep, I was like, scared. I was like, I'm sick. I don't want to get sick. That's like was my thought the whole time. What if I get sick again? Like I don't want to get sick. That was all I was saying. And I was also like, fuck, like I'm this young. Like how much potential do I have? I could have been like training. I could have been Mr. Olympia till I was 40. Like all this shit I was could have, would have, should have been in my head. And that was just like, it was causing a lot of mental stress in my body. And it was after that show when I won that, and there was like a part of me that almost didn't enjoy it as much as I should have because of all the fear I had leading into it. I wasn't present. I wasn't mindful in the moment of my whole prep. And it was just like kind of weird feeling after where I was really excited to win. And then I went home and I was like, I don't like using the word depressed because I wasn't like too deep, but I didn't feel like myself. And I wasn't as happy I wasn't really happy at all. And I just won the Olympia and I was like, why do I feel like shit? And it was because I just shunted so much emotion in my body. It was like, oh, am I going to get sick? Like all day I'd sit there touching my shins. People would look at me and I'm just standing there pushing my shins, just waiting for it to be swollen. And it was just all that was in my head. So I wasn't really present at all and I wasn't able to enjoy it. And after I felt like that for a while, I was just like, if I'm going to compete again next year, I have to change my mind. That's the number one thing I have to fix right now. Because I think I can handle everything physically. I know I can. I just got to fix my head. So I did start seeing a therapist. She was helping me with that. And some of the stuff they said was just kind of getting your mind into the right place to think. She was like, she tried to give me like she was like, pick a mantra or something. And I don't remember exactly what I said, but something like, I'm not sick.
So
like
positive affirmations.
Yeah. But I said so. And the way I was saying, like, I am not sick. I am not my disease. And she's like, your subconscious can't even understand the word not. When you have the word not in a sentence, you don't understand that. You don't want to not be sick. You want to be healthy. So I stopped being like, I'm not sick, and started just like, I am healthy. I am happy. I am grateful to be here. I'm excited to compete. I'm going to let myself be excited because I know I deserve to be here and my body can do, and I know I can do this. And that kind of mental switch of like, instead of avoiding the negative and just instead putting your mind into the positive, it changed my whole world in my every aspect of my life. And that's why I think, honestly, like my body responded so well that year, and I was able to make such an insane change in my physique. People are like, what'd you do for training? What back exercises did you do? How'd your back come up? I'm like, I know I want to tell you that, like, I did train harder because I felt better, though, but it still all started with my mind. My body was relaxed. It was able to take everything in. I was able to recover, and it was just everything kind of flowed in with each other like that.
And that's, I mean, you guys, you need to kind of replay that in your head over and over again, because that's one of the biggest factors that I see whether it's a competitor, whether it's a CEO, somebody building their business. And I've done it myself plenty of times. You get into your own head, right?
Yep.
And you can't see the forest for the trees. It's like you do have all these good things going on in your life, but you're hyper focusing on all the negative, and you're not mindful, or you're not being grateful of being present in the moment. Like what's going on, all the positive stuff you have on your life. And like Chris said, when you start kind of shifting your mindset more towards the positive, having positive affirmations, being in the moment, like wake up, like we all have stressful days, and I'm not saying that's not going to happen, but all of us have something to be grateful for, or that we have blessed in our lives, and we forget about those little things. And then whenever said event comes along, whether you got a promotion or you won the Olympia or whatever, then you reflect back like, oh, wow, like I didn't even enjoy the journey.
Yep.
You were so caught up in this negative mindset, obviously because of stuff that happened in the past, and everybody's past kind of lingers in there. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. And I mean, a huge step forward for you, and you know, kudos to you for going to talking to somebody, because I've done that myself. And a lot of people, especially guys, they just think that it's not macho, or, you know, their ego. Yeah. I mean, that's just ridiculous. I mean, who cares? I mean, you want to have a quality life. You want to have longevity in your life, and getting your mind right is part of all that. And like Chris said, it will affect your physical appearance much better, because stress is stress. So from a physiological perspective, even if it's all mental and you're doing everything great from a physical perspective, that internal environment is still going to react the same. You're still going to be jacking up cortisol levels. You're still going to be jacking up catecholamines. You're still going to be downregulating GI function. The immune system is going to be suppressed. And that's huge for you too, obviously, with the immune function. And then just negative cascade after negative cascade. And it's because you can't get out of your own head from these negative mindset. So it's just this one bottleneck that people can't get rid of. And they're like, I'm doing my training the way I'm supposed to. I'm eating 100% on plan. But then they're stressed out over everything else.
Yep.
And they're not getting that in check, and that's just holding them back, right? So that's awesome, man, to hear that you went through all that and the steps you're taking, because I think a big part of our audience really needs to hear that. And I think, again, this goes to every demographic. It's not just about competitors, guys. You know that everything that we talk about in here goes towards everybody. And I think the problem, too, with some physique competitors is they think that kind of niche or demographic is different than stay-at-home mom or a CEO or whatever, and it's not at all. I mean, we all work the same inside, guys. It's not any different than that. There's just kind of different goals in mind here. So let's go back and touch on the nutritional aspect. So we talked about the physical. You managed that. So what did you do a little bit differently from a nutrition standpoint when you were dealing with all this and getting into a better place there?
I mean, a lot of it was just really, really simple. Just eating cleaner 100% of the time. There was no, like, everyone obviously loves in their off seasons, like, oh, you want to go get some extra calories and go get like a burger or a burrito even, or just random processed food and shit. And a big thing that helped was I met my girlfriend in 2018 right after I got sick. And that was one of those like meant to be things, you know, like she's very holistic. She's had her own gut issues. To this day, I haven't seen her eat like processed sugar in 3 years, like ever. She won't do it. It's crazy. She won't eat anything out of like packets, and like she's never had fast food. I'm like, what? I'm like, how do you do this? I'm like, I'm not perfect, obviously.
Sure.
It's a constant job for me to like stay away from it and everything. But her being there and kind of teaching me this stuff really helped a lot. And it was just like eating as simple as possible. I'm not 100% like paleo at all, but I try and be as much as I can. Like single ingredient foods, as simple as possible. No processed meats, nothing high in sodium, nothing, just like no fake shit. And if you can like live off that, you're already doing well. It's it's a big rule. It's hard, but you're already doing well on top of that. And then there were some little things within that, like trying to avoid specific inflammatory foods, a lot of oils and stuff. Like a big thing she did was when she came over and she saw I had Pam cooking spray. She threw that shit in the garbage. I have like a refillable spray bottle of extra virgin olive oil now, you know, so to like cook with and everything. Just random simple things that you normally wouldn't think of. You mentioned potassium the other day. I avoid things with crazy potassium, so I already mainly liked broccoli and asparagus. So that's usually the veggies that I eat. Eating a lot of fruit and berries. And then one of the big specific things I've done 3 times now, I guess, is I've gone through the AIP diet for about a month or so, and that sucks. especially the bodybuilder. I just accept I'm going to lose a bunch of weight because I can't eat that much food.
Yeah.
You can probably explain it better than me, but it's avoiding pretty much anything that bodybuilders eats, like nuts, grains, legumes, nightshades. So you can't have potatoes, rice, oats, none of that stuff. So I pretty much lived off like boiled or baked chicken with nothing on it, and then some sweet potato, some bone broth, and like shit like that.
Yeah, I mean, with the nutrition, like, so with autoimmune issues, obviously we got to call. It's not that you got to 100% avoid them, but you want to keep to low inflammatory based foods, and it's a little bit different with everybody on how these reacts. And, you know, a little plug here for a test, because there's lots of like food sensitivity tests out there and whatever. That the problem with a lot of them is they're testing stuff like IgG kind of as a standalone. So kind of like the problem with those is like if you eat a lot of chicken or if you eat a lot of one certain food and you get the test done for that, it's going to automatically flag it that you're sensitive, but all it is because you're in it and it's constantly in your system. Yeah. You're not actually sensitive or allergic to it, right? So one of the best tests out there is an MRT test. But it breaks down things, all the chemicals, and basically showing the immune response on the kind of like the end of everything instead of like the initial, like when you have a food, that initial reaction. It's more of a end game type thing to what's happening from an immune system response. And the way they chart, it's very easy to kind of look at, and we break it down for clients and stuff like, okay, these foods we need to kind of avoid for 6 weeks. We need to avoid these for 6 months. And then at some point, though, you could possibly bring them back in, because when you avoid them, inflammation comes down, obviously. And then you can have a different reaction when you put it back in the system. So nothing's like completely off limits. Yeah. But it's like a cycling type thing, which from the bodybuilding lifestyle is actually a good takeaway, because we go from these kind of highs and lows from a caloric intake and not just pushing food all the time, or just not chronically under eating unless you're crazy and doing like 8 shows in a year, which I never recommend doing. But like definitely the inflammatory based foods, typically obviously dairy, gluten, wheat, soy, those are kind of the common things that we see that we get people not to avoid but minimize in their diet. And like you say, it's not like you're never going to have a French fry again. It's not like you're never going to have a burger again. But like 95% of the time, you have to avoid, especially the processed foods. So like we don't like, it's like, I don't want to say, you know, do this diet, that diet, whatever. Just eat whole, unprocessed foods. Stay away from things that oxidize, like if you're cooking with oils, you know, don't cook with oils that oxidize really fast. Stick with things like ghee, coconut oils, avocado oils. If you're going to use olive oil to cook with, keep it at medium heat or lower, because it only has a threshold for temperature. But they're great things to use. So people just don't, in my opinion, don't have enough diversity when it comes to their food, especially bodybuilders. We get stuck in the same shit all the time. Chicken, rice, a potato, chicken, rice, potato. Like it's like they're afraid of the rainbow here. Like there's orange and white and purple, like veggies, fruits, all that stuff, the phytonutrients that come in that, all the anti-inflammatory effects you get from all that stuff, antioxidants. So I really implore like bodybuilders, especially in physique competitors, or even the general demographic does it as well. They get stuck in eating the same stuff over and over. And that in and of itself can cause GI issues, because your gut biome needs diversity, right? There's good, bad bacteria, but if you are not eating one nutrient for so long, you can get lower amounts, obviously, of that in, then you're going to disrupt the biome imbalances. And one thing too, like you briefly touched on, was gut health. I mean, that's a huge factor. And I know I've seen Courtney's huge on the gut issues because what she dealt with in her past. So I'm sure she's rubbing off on you
for sure,
on what to do and what not to do from a gut perspective, because obviously the gut, like I said, everything's interconnected, right? So when you get that high inflammatory response or that high stress response, the two systems that are down-regulated are going to be the digestive system and the immune system. So kind of think about that, guys. Just take a step back to simply think about that. If I'm stressed out all the time in some way, shape, or form, I'm always suppressing GI function and I'm always suppressing my immune response. So you think it's probably going to get a little bit easier for you to get sick, easier to have more food sensitivities to even healthy, quote unquote, healthy foods. And it's not really the foods. It's because you're stressed the hell out and you're not chilling and fixing those issues. So it's like, we always like to try to find the root cause of something. Like where's this? I may have this symptom, but the symptom's not really the problem, right? Like people have knee issues, and like half the time it's not actually the knee that's causing the issues. It's something upstream or downstream. Same thing from a physiological perspective. You have bloating or you have excess gas or whatever it may be. That may not be that one because people eat a food and they get a symptom. Oh, well, I'm allergic to that, so I cut it out. Mm-hmm. But then they eat another food, and I'm allergic to that, and then they cut everything out. And then they go on low FODMAP or all these other types of diets out there, and then before you know it, they have no type of variation in their food. Fiber is non-existent, and now you're opening your body up to even more disease and more possibilities, more inflammation. And then again, everything just literally just keeps spiraling and spiraling and spiraling. And I don't want to confuse you guys and make things overly complicated here. I mean, I would say the easiest thing, and I'm sure there's plenty of takeaways that Chris already said, is controlling inflammation, managing stress, and like, for love of God, like manage your training too, like this whole 6 days a week or no days off type people, and God, go hard or go home or whatever. Like professional athletes, right? And even like competitors like Chris, 2 months off for the most part. Professional athletes in other sports, they take time off from their sports. And it's like the fitness industry is the only industry where there's no time off. Mm-hmm. It's just always go, 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 go.
Everyone's like post-show, okay, leg day, I got to get back.
Yes. It's like, my God, your body was not meant to build muscle tissue or build fat 365 days a year.
Well, people also understand to not scare them away from that. Not only am I doing it for health reasons and inflammation, but you can actually long-term are able to put on more muscle if you take
100%.
more rest. If your body's more rested, you'll keep growing. You won't plateau as likely. So it's not something to be just for health. It's actually for gains as well.
It's for progress.
Yeah.
People, it's just that mindset. It's like, if I don't work out for 1 week, I'm going to lose all my muscle tissue. Yeah. Which is honestly, guys, physiologically impossible unless you're doing something like you just don't eat food and you do a shit ton of cardio. You're not going to lose any muscle. You can take, like, I program time off for my clients. Like, it's 1 week throughout the entire year, like sporadically through the year, we take time off, and that's to keep them progressing in the right direction from a physical perspective, but then also from the mental perspective. Because if you can't mentally step away from the gym for like a week without freaking the hell out, that's not really a healthy lifestyle. And when I say balance with people, yes, I know as a high-end athlete, there's not quote unquote real balance, but to me, that's the balance. Like, you need to mentally be able to step back from the gym and not like your whole life is being in that gym. Because I'm sure you've seen people like that. If they take time away, it's like they don't know what to do with themselves. It's like, oh, I can't go to work. What am I going to do? Like, is there anything else in life you enjoy other than working out?
Short-term work, it might make you feel better, but like long-term, it's just a crutch, and you shouldn't be depending on anything to feel sane, really.
I mean, fulfill your life, guys. I mean, there's other things out in this world besides working out, and trust me, I love working out, and it's always going to be a part of my life, but I don't wrap my world completely around that. Now, obviously there are those periods in a prep or whatever you are hyper-focused and you have an event to get to. That is what it is. I'm not telling you that whatsoever. I'm just talking bigger picture type deal. Trust me, I've done all the stupidest, dumbest stuff you can think about in the 3 decades I've been doing this. So this is from experiences. This is not me talking out of my ass because I've done all the wrong things. So our goal with the podcast is to help you guys keep from making all these mistakes, like not having to deal with these things, and have a better shot of making progress or staying healthy, whatever your goal may be, and not, have to worry about these types of issues we're talking about, long term. And if you do the small things like just eating unprocessed foods, making sure you're recovering from your training just 4 days a week, 5 days a week, managing your stress, mental, emotional, and then just enjoying life in general, it all kind of balances itself out.
It all gets easier too.
Yes.
Like some people are like thinking food like it's going to be hard to get rid of, like cutting out unprocessed food and stuff. And I'm at the point where I don't even like it.
Yep. I
don't even like dessert anymore. My parents think I'm crazy. We go over there and I'm like, I just want some more like food, I guess. But like, I don't like eating shitty anymore. Your body adapts and you get used to it. It's easier. And same with training, you start to be like excited for a rest day and then excited to get back. And it's like, it ends up all being more positive. Yeah. You just have to get over that initial hump of being like, I don't want to do that. Be like, why don't you want to do that?
There's always a transition period, with anything. You get used to those hyper-palatable foods, like high sugar, high fats. Yes, they taste good. And obviously, I still have mine here and there. But like Chris said, like the reason you get fixated on those is, I mean, it's like a drug. They are addictive. You get used to that taste and be like, oh my God, it's so super sweet. And then you go eat something that's more natural and like, oh, this is just bland. This tastes awful. Initially, yes, it will taste like that. But then the more you do it, then you eat the healthier stuff, unprocessed, and you go back to those foods. You're like, wow,
yeah,
like this is just too much. Like it's just almost over the top type stuff. So just keeping it simple. And again, guys, we're not saying you're never to go enjoy yourself or have a piece of cake or whatever. Just think bigger picture type thing, right? And majority of the stuff that you're eating and the things that you're doing to your body, just take a step back sometimes and think about, and not be too emotionally connected to food as well. Because I mean, I'm sure you've seen people like that, that like when they get stressed, it's like two ways. When they get stressed, they either eat a shit ton of food or they just don't eat at all. Yeah. So you got like two extremes there, which neither one of them are good to be doing. So go out, be social. Just because you're out being social doesn't mean you have to eat every single thing that your friends are eating. If they're eating tons of dessert and French fries, that doesn't mean you have to. If you want to, that's fine too. It's your choice. But I'm just saying, make it about being in the moment, so to speak, being with your friends, socializing, being in that environment, and not making all that just about food, because people do that as well. It's like they live for a meal. Yeah. Oh shit, I'm hardcore 5 days a week. Saturday, it's time to eat up.
Yeah, that cheat meal side where anytime you go out to eat, it's just like, okay, just like sitting there just salivating till the food comes out. You can't think of anything else. And
so do you have those days? So like if Courtney and you go on a date, do you have like your go-to places that you go to? Do you indulge a little bit?
I definitely do a little bit. We really like eating at home. Like I just love home cooked food so much more than the restaurants. Always. And Courtney's an amazing chef and baker. Yep. So she'll make me these muffins all the time that are like sugar-free, organic, whole food muffins, and they're amazing. Or her salmon dishes she makes are so good. So normally we like to do that. But when we go out, of course, again, she's so stuck on that. We always find like the kind of healthy, like farm to table, exactly those kind of restaurants. And then we just go there, and we definitely still enjoy food when we go out. Yeah. But what we enjoy now is a healthier food. We have different stuff. Like her muffins and stuff, I think, are the best muffins I've ever had in the world. But if someone who went to McDonald's and got a muffin in there, they'd probably be like, it doesn't taste like anything. And you know, that palate you're talking about, it changes. Yeah. But we still go out and we enjoy, especially being here. And normally in Canada, I'm not around too many people go out, and people have been going out here, and I've been still going out and kind of enjoying meeting new people, such as yourself. You know, we went out for sushi, and I don't do that all the time, but when I'm traveling, I'm more likely to, just for the social aspect of it.
But you can nowadays, especially the places we like to eat here, most of them are healthy anyways, or healthy options. It's being mindful of what you're putting on your plate. You can pretty much eat quote unquote healthy at pretty much any place.
For sure.
But it's just that mindset you develop. Like I'm the same way. I go eat sushi, but I also, when I order my sushi rolls, it's typically raw fish and rice. Not a lot of like spicy mayo sauces, or I don't get the fried sushi whatsoever. Or if we're going out to a nicer restaurant, I just get a steak rare. I don't have anything put on it. I'm anal and I say no oil or anything, because they always brush oil on it. But the farm to table places are by far the best. Have you been to the Gafford here?
I have.
Okay.
But me and Courtney just went to District Market.
Oh, yeah.
And then we want to go to Gafford as well.
Gafford's that farm to table there.
Yeah. I've been there when I came in there the first time. It's amazing.
And then our next place, I know we're getting off topic, guys, but it's okay. There's Osceola Cafe. That's where we go. It's a home owned.
I think we've gotten a muffin there one day.
Oh, the muffins there, pistachio muffin.
Made us go in there and get it.
Yes, the bomb. But that's what me and Nicole, we're the same way. We go out to those type of places because, I mean, we do indulge here and there, but we still like to eat healthy foods. I just like the way it tastes. Yeah, it has nothing to do with like, oh man, relax, eat whatever. This is just what I enjoy, right? It's nice because the environment down here, nobody's like, they don't do that. Like, why are you eating this? Why are you not eating this? Like, that's irrelevant. So anything else you want to throw in here, Chris, that you can think about to kind of help our listeners, so to speak, to get on this path of being a little bit more mindful of what they're doing? Anybody that could possibly, obviously, be going through the pressures of dealing with something that you're dealing with, something you can kind of give them to take away from all this?
It's always hard to give someone like a piece of advice. You kind of need to get to a point in your life where you're ready to choose it and accept it. And for some people, maybe it's just seeing that and finding your why and your reasons why. Obviously, my why was kind of a big slap in the face and was like, you get your shit together. And like I said, in that first year, I was a victim about it. I was like, why me? I could have been such a great bodybuilder, all this bullshit. And then the kind of mantra I picked up after that was life happens for me, not to me. So it's like
100%.
What happened to me that year when I got sick is why I am where I am now. It's what made me a stronger person mentally. It made me a better person, a better boyfriend, whatever, everything. And so through that, I was able to grow from it and find the positive in it. And sometimes it's just if you're sitting there and you're always blaming other people for something, blaming your health, blaming God for giving you a disease or just anything outside of what's inside yourself, you kind of got to take a step back and be like, why is this going on? And it's kind of hard to realize your ego sometimes because the point of your ego is to be right all the time. And then even to the point of where if you're going to hurt yourself with something, your ego would rather be right and hurt than wrong and feel good. So you really got to just really look at yourself through a non-biased view and just be like, why am I doing this? Am I being a victim? Is this, what's in my control? What can I take control of and how can I do that? And just try and be like that. Yeah,
that's a great point. The victim mindset that everybody, yes, we've all done it, but it's being able to take that step back and realize that that's what you're doing and quit, because what those people will also do, they play the victim and they're going to blame everybody else or blame everything else on where they're at when they have control over everything, and they're the only ones that can actually change their lives and move in different directions. We get people, especially with the health issues that we deal with, and our first thing that we tell them is like, this is an investment in you. This is not an investment in me, right? You're the one that needs to get your mind right and want this. I can give you the best plan in the world, but if you actually don't want to change or want to make your life better, it's not going to happen, no matter what kind of plan that you have in front of you, and you're going to fail at it. So yeah, I mean, guys, I mean, I'm going to leave it at that because that was a great takeaway. Hopefully we'll get some more of Chris on here soon because we were definitely going to get him back.
I got to come back here.
But guys, thank you again for watching and listening to the REVIVECAST. Obviously, if you could give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to the channel, leave us any reviews that you can. It always helps us out. Obviously, if you have any questions, feel free to DM me. I'm happy to answer those. And until next time, guys.